a lot of questions that we've received about career transitions and basically also the state of the market. So really hope that today caters to your goals and your professional aspirations for the next year. We have an amazing set of speakers, so I'm really excited to introduce them. But first, I want to understand from everyone here who's currently going through a career transition. Who wants to go through a career transition? Okay. Who's been through a career transition before? Interesting. I have too, multiple times. So cool. I'll introduce our speakers. First, I want to introduce our moderator. Hi. Thea, who's going to be going through the questions and everything. So round of applause. Okay. Awesome. And to start, I want to introduce our speaker, Mindy Honcoop. She's the founder and Fractional people leader. Kasey Randall, he is a founder and product design consultant for Kasey Design, our founder for Varsha, and also my dear friend. She's a product manager and UX strategy consultant for Fidelity. David Ciccocioppo. Ciccocioppo. I practiced. Lead UX architect. Awesome. And then Zeina Kronfol, who's a founder and career transition coach. Awesome. So I'll pass this over to Tia, and at the end we'll have Q&As as well. So feel free to just write them down. We'll have a section for your questions and stuff. All right.
Just real quick, I'm going to chime in. Just want to say thank you for Capital Factory for hosting us this evening. Round of applause, Capital Factory. Couldn't have these events without them. And then, of course, Shortlist Recruitment for sponsoring our beverages this evening as well. We'll send out more information about them after the event. And I'm going to pass it on to Thea. And again, also, first of all, Noor. Let's give a round of applause for Noor, her first time on stage tonight with us. Thea, it's all yours.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Kasey. Can you guys hear me okay? All right. Awesome. I'm having Zoom flashbacks. All right. Well, we have a ton of questions to get through tonight, so I'll kind of keep everything in a fast clip if possible. Starting things off, what inspired you to pursue a career transition, and how long had you been thinking about switching careers? Let's start with you, Mindy.
So, in the past, because right now I'm not in a career transition, but I just made one recently.
Yes.
So 2 years ago, I left my chief people officer job and kind of was searching for what was next. And I just thought, I'm just going to get my next chief people officer position, right? And through that journey, I was really getting frustrated as I was interviewing with these organizations and seeing the same yellow and red flags, and through the interviews was really realizing what I truly enjoyed, what I truly was my kind of zone of genius, and what is it that I really want to do with my time. And as I started to go from one conversation to the next, I started taking up some side gigs to be able to feed my dogs, because it's expensive to live in Austin. And I started to actually join groups like this. I started really exploring, meeting people, and really talking with others, and found this world of fractional HR, and realized that some of what I was doing in my work as a chief people officer, how I could line that through Agile and HR to greater meet the need that I was seeing in my interviews within small, medium businesses. So that journey did kind of take 2 years, because Agile and HR was founded for the need to get a contracting position through a vendor management, because they needed a business insurance, and to have a business insurance, you need an LLC. I didn't stop interviewing full-time until December of this past year. And I actually was realized, no, this is me. This is what I'm doing. And at the end of the day, that career transition, I needed to see that in myself. I needed to reconnect with myself. Other people were seeing it, and I needed to have the trust and confidence.
Great answer.
That was damn good. I got like nothing else. I haven't really had a career transition per se, but definitely exploring those side hustles that have turned into jobs, right? Manufacturing opportunities on the side. Just because I never really I didn't lean too heavily on my 9 to 5. I always thought there was other passions out there to explore and like not being afraid. Again, Mindy and I were talking about pickleball earlier. I hate to be that person, but yeah, I got obsessed with pickleball last year and I started a whole company around it. So, and that's going phenomenally well as far as building a brand. And it's been, I've learned so much since then, and like just jumping into the unknown, both feet first, charting the uncharted waters. And it's made me a better person in the last year for building that company. As well as my design business as well, which at the end of the day, like I've been a freelancer my entire career, on and off, but building a business around product design and working with clients at that sort of, that level of, having contractors that work for you and having an LLC or, an S Corp, doing all the business things that aren't sexy. But having to do them regardless. So it's definitely been a fun learning experience. I've definitely hit a wall a few times, that's for sure. But, I'm going to pass it over to Varsha. She's absolutely phenomenal. Thanks.
Thanks, Kasey. So yeah, I've had a couple of transitions even out of college. So I really didn't know what I wanted to do. And my first job, I was like, this is not it. And so I started studying about UX and how I could get into UX. And that's kind of, I just like paved my own path, took classes, realized the boot camps are not for me. So I just took on some of my own projects and I started working in UX and worked in multiple different roles doing design and research. And as I was getting more into research and strategy, that's when I was like, I think I really like the strategic, high level work in this. And that's when I went to get my MBA because I was like, okay, I want to do more research, more strategy, but I also want to be more in tune with the business, making decisions, building products. And so, yeah, for me, it wasn't necessarily I want to become a product manager, but it was more what I wanted to do in my 9 to 5. And like Kasey, I've always kind of done my own freelance work, projects. And it was during that transition from UX to product where I was really honing on my skills to build my own brand outside of work. So I was working with startups, and that's what I really found that I enjoy. Love working with startups that are not really sure how to reach their users, sometimes not sure who their target users are. And so that's really fulfilling to me. But moving into product management, it's been awesome to have that UX background because we work so closely with UX researchers and designers. And yeah, it's blended really well for me. If I was, 7 years ago, if I was thinking about what I'd be doing, I'd probably still say that I was going to be in UX. So yeah, I honestly didn't know what my path was going to be, but right now, really liking where I am. But, I could go into another role in a couple of years, so.
Great.
Thank you. I guess my story is a lot less glamorous than some of the folks up here, but my most recent career transition came from being laid off at my previous position. I was in the creative advertising world for about 20 years, and at the beginning of the pandemic, all of our clients were mostly food and beverage, entertainment, that kind of thing. And a lot of them, had to shut down because everybody was staying home and figuring out how to navigate this lockdown situation. So I hadn't been really happy and fulfilled at my job for the longest time, but I still kind of craved that stability and wanted to stick around, and wasn't really sure it was the right time to make the move. But when I was laid off, I was forced to do a situation where I didn't really have a choice, and I needed to do something and do something quickly. And I thought to myself, well, I could go apply for another job and a lateral move, that kind of thing. But I had been kind of curious about the user experience world for a few years, and also realized that kind of wanted to try a different direction and kind of up level a little bit in terms of my relevance, I guess you could say. Coming from an advertising background where you started out with print media, radio, television, that kind of thing, a lot of those things had, fallen by the wayside, and people were looking to get into more digital things. And I certainly was in that kind of mindset as well. And UX really intrigued me, and made the decision after I was laid off rather than apply to jobs. I just jumped right into a boot camp and made the best of it, and got hired within 6 months or something like that. So, yeah.
Yeah, David was our boot camp success story. That's how we met, in the same UX boot camp, and he was hired before it even ended. So a testament to how much work you put into it, and just your design shops. Thanks, David. Zeina?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I feel like a lot of overlap with everyone who's spoken. My transition started definitely in university as well. I was a poli-sci international studies major, wanted to work for the UN, and then fell into advertising, like not at all related. And then from there, pretty much every few years, I just would feel this overwhelming sense of just lack of fulfillment, lack of purpose. And I made all of these changes externally. Like I moved cities, I changed job types from working at an agency with tons of huge clients to working client side, where I was the client and managing agencies, doing, project management, brand strategy, product management, all the things. And I found myself constantly making, every 2-3 years, making changes in my job because I wasn't happy. And it took me less and less time at each new job thinking like, oh, once I'm working, I am the client, I'll be happier. No, once I'm in sports nutrition, I'll be super happy. And all these things kept happening. And finally, when I was doing the one thing that just made all the sense, I was like, wait, I'm still not happy. Like something is very different here. So really, it was a lot of really deep personal development work over the years, and just kind of chasing that fulfillment, because I know, you can kind of fake it for a little bit, but for me, it was just very, very, very challenging. So that was kind of my journey. And even going from kind of more arguably the biggest change I made was being more in the international marketing space for years, knowing that like, I'm really good at this, but it got to a point where I didn't even want to get out of bed a lot of days because I just wasn't happy. And falling into the coaching and consulting space, very new to me. But I really enjoy it. Like I always wanted to do something where I felt like I was deeply impacting people, helping them change their own lives. And I'd already had a master's degree. I thought about going back to school for psychology or something similar, but it just wasn't the right fit. So I wanted to do something where I could still work with people and help them kind of help themselves, essentially give them the tools to help themselves. And that's kind of the latest one. And I'm also working on some current transitions as well. It's almost like every few years, I kind of like, want to do a different evolution, or even just whatever step you take naturally, builds upon itself or opens a door to something else that you wouldn't have imagined. And one thing I will say, if you had ever asked me, would I work for myself? It was a hard no. Like, I think that's the biggest thing. When I was going through all my coaching training and certifications, we literally had curriculum about being a business owner. I threw it away. Like, I was like, this is so irrelevant. I would never do that. Being around so many creative people, I always thought they're really good at this. It makes sense for them. I've done everything in marketing, but never really niched down. So, just even using that as inspiration of like, if something you feel like you would never do it, just never say never, because you would be shocked of like who you were, even a few months ago.
Wow. Okay. Those are really great answers. And you guys actually answered so many other things we have, which is fantastic. One of the things that I heard was that it sometimes wasn't linear and sometimes they were, changes forced by circumstance. Like I also was laid off, which prompted me to do that boot camp a lot like David. And I am kind of curious if there's anyone here who resonates with that, like you are being forced to change your career because of circumstance. That relates. Raise a hand. Okay, a lot of you. And then there's also the kind of spiritual rumblings, which is what I call it, where you feel it inside and you're just feeling like it's not right. And for those of you up here who have felt that, you're not being forced by an outside circumstance, but it's just something internal. How did you know when the time was right to make that change?
I'm just going to say that we're missing a microphone real quick. Nor, if you have it, please bring it up here. Thank you.
So I've had multiple transitions in my life, and one was definitely because of a layoff. But from the first question of just inner rumblings, I love to set goals. I'm a planner, and so when I went to the University of Washington to go into the social work program, because at the time it was ranked 3rd in the nation. I wanted to be a social worker. I was going through the program. I went through 2 years of unpaid internships. And I realized in my senior year, I was like, oh my goodness, this is like, I want to run away. Like, and something inside of me was, I want to make a difference. I want to help people. I love people. I want to make a positive impact. I want to help. But as a social worker, I'm not going to be able to really drive the change that I want to, that I feel that I'm gifted to do, what is my purpose. And so I was then forced to really look deeply about who is it that I'm wanting to drive impact for? What is the audience that I'm wanting to serve? And how can I have a greater change? And that's through conversations that led me through the HR world, and being able to see how social work overlays within human resources and workplaces, and really thinking about workplaces as an ecosystem. And so much of the skills that I was learning within social work that applied within the workplace, if we could create healthier workplaces, we could have healthier society.
Yeah, I was going to follow suit with, there's some things that happen circumstantially as well, things that you just don't expect along the journey. During a career or job transition is just part of life. It's called just, living life. And when you experience something like, working in web design for 5 years, building a portfolio on the side, bartending to pay the bills, and all of a sudden you meet 2 guys talking about software and apps at your bar, and you're interested in these things. So going back to like networking and friend working and whatever we want to call it, like making friends and building relationships with people and getting out there and doing stuff and just, sharing interests with folks. You never know when that goes. And I never expected, after I wrote down my Yahoo email on a beverage napkin and gave it to this guy, I never expected to hear from him ever again. And 6 hours later, lo and behold, he sent me the application to a UX design position at a New Orleans startup. And I worked there for 2 years, and there was not much HR there. I'll be honest with you. He opened the door. He opened the door in flip flops and a tank top. So that really, this is circa 2014, 2015, and it really opened my eyes to a different world. That was my career transition. That was I feel like my career development, and it was only because I spoke up and said something to these 2 gentlemen at my bar. That's the only reason that even happened.
That's awesome. I really like what Mindy said about feeling like you're making an impact. For me, I think outside of work, you're always learning about your own strengths and your interests. And I think that's driven me a lot too in my transitions from role to even like pivoting careers, is just learning more about myself. As I got further into my career, I learned I really like integrating different teams and people, and that was a strength of mine. So I wanted to keep moving forward with my career and building those strengths, rather than, saying like, I don't like this, or I don't want to be doing this. Like, moving more towards what I actually like doing and what I'm good at. And I think that's helped me, you know, my friends kind of make fun of me because I've been known to change jobs pretty frequently. And it's not to say I love, you know, starting at a new company and doing the onboarding and all of that. It's not always fun. No, it's kind of the worst. But for me, I think, you know, as I learned more about myself and my strengths, and I didn't see that opportunity in the near future at the place I was at, I sought that at another place. And that's kind of, I would say, changing companies has really impacted my growth a lot. If I think back to maybe the first couple of companies I worked at, if I had stayed there, I'm not sure. I was feeling stagnant too, and I think it really depends on the company you're at. But for me, I just didn't see another way besides leaving and trying something different.
Yeah, kind of along those same lines. I mean, I was in a situation where I felt the fire, I felt the urge, the itch to ditch, or whatever you want to call it, for many years. And for whatever reason, I just kind of stuck with where I was at because of the stability, or just the you know, the peace of mind that I had a paying gig, you know. But then when I came to that layoff, I felt equal amounts of terror and release and joy and excitement, because I finally got the kick out of the door that I needed, that I couldn't just, you know, muster that motivation to take on my own. And I think I was talking to Eric, I think earlier, about that motivation and kind of knowing, you know, when it's time, you'll feel it. And sometimes you feel it and you just can't, you need some outside circumstance or person or situation or something to, you know, kind of give you that kick out the door and get you to make that move. And yeah, I mean, my biggest regret is that I didn't make the move sooner. And so yeah, like, my outside circumstance made it a lot easier, and it gave me the motivation that I needed to pursue that change that I desperately needed.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. I mean, I've experienced both the intuition of, hey, I know this is wrong, like, not wrong for me, but my time here is up, but really waited a little bit too long to make that decision, or was kind of trying to wait for, the perfect opportunity or the perfect whatever. There's this motivational video that I'll watch every now and then, like, there's never going to be the perfect opportunity, right? You have to take that leap and you'll learn something from it. Or like you said, you almost overstay your welcome and the universe is like, nope, we're kicking you out of the door, like, go fly and be free. And it's in those moments too, like, having that, you know, you will experience the loss and the grief and all those things, which is very natural, but knowing, like, you were pushed out of this for a reason. You were ready to do something different, and maybe you don't see it in yourself and you have to look at it in hindsight, but you will see in hindsight, like, wow, if I hadn't left that company when I did, I would have been part of whatever else, you know, disaster maybe happened after that. Or, you know, you were exposed to different opportunities that you would have never even dreamed of. And it's every single step that you take is you're learning lessons. There's no failure, it's always feedback. So really just reframing when you are struggling, especially with layoffs, it's so challenging right now, but whatever you're going through is knowing that this is happening for you. And trust me, I've been through a lot this, like, the past 6 months. Sometimes you're like, there is no way this is happening for me. But if you're able to find something in that, like any sort of light, and you may not see it in that exact moment, but every single thing that's happening is almost you proving your worth. Like, if you want to gamify it, your worth to the next level. You're gathering information and knowledge and strength, or whatever it is that you need to take that new job, to start your business, to whatever it is that you are called to do. And once you kind of are able to see that on the other side, it's really, really beautiful. It's really hard and shitty, to be honest, while you're going through it, but just kind of keeping your head up and knowing, like, this is genuinely happening for me, and trying to reframe those things so you're not kind of bogged down by those really heavy feelings sometimes.
Yeah, I just want to parachute in on reframing and taking control of the situation so that you're in power of what comes next, and you don't become necessarily a victim. You are ahead of the curve when these things do happen, which they will. And I'll never forget, I was in DC working at a tech company for 2 years and absolutely loved that job. Ended up on the metaphorical roof, as they say, when a project in the government dies and you're unassigned. So you're basically on the Hooli roof. You might guess that. Anybody? Okay. Unassigned. So, and I told my partner at the time, I was like, I either quit or I'm gonna get fired. I just had that feeling 2 years into it that it was time for me to move on. Not that things were dragging along or I was unassigned. It's like it was time for me to move. Time for me to change. Time for me to find something new. And I went to a bar where they had a fortune teller, and I shit you not. This is a few days after I mentioned I will either quit or get fired, and I shit you not. She told me verbatim to my face, after reading my fortune and cards, hey, you're not really happy with your job right now. You're in a really interesting place. By the way, I don't buy into any of this, but like, she's like, you either quit or you're gonna get fired. I'm like, wow. And the next day I put my 2-week notice in, going back into freelance and contracting for a little while until I found my next role, because I wanted to take control back and, write my own destiny.
David, were you about to?
I was just going to make a joke, but let's.
Okay. Well, I really appreciate you guys reframing that, because I think there's the pits of despair when you're trying to figure out what your next move is. And I think just by showing up to events like this, you're exhibiting curiosity in your own journey and learning from everyone else here. And one of the things that is, it sounds like you guys all have a really good grasp on what your skills are and your interests, and you really kind of outlined a lot of the journey to figure out where to go and what your skills were. But what are some practical tools to help identify the skills from your previous careers that were transferable to that next field, or to that next role? Because a lot of people here are probably wondering, like, I'm good at some things in this role that I've done for 20 years in one role, and switching to something else. How do you kind of categorize all those different skill sets you've built over the years without getting overwhelmed or maybe scared?
Okay, I guess I'll start on this one. Wow. So from what I knew about UX and learned about UX, I knew there was a lot of empathy. I knew there was a lot of collaboration. I knew there was a lot of iterating, trying things over and over again. And those were things that I had done in my career over 20 years, in the creative industry, like working with clients, talking with clients, finding out their needs. The executive creative director that had worked above me before I was laid off actually came from the tech world and brought in a lot of those agile and Scrum kind of methodologies and kind of opened my eyes up to different ways of doing it. So instead of the Mad Men era where it's like you come in with your boards and your presentation, you say, here it is, take it or leave it. He talked about getting the clients involved more and having them sit down and in sketching sessions and like not keeping them out of the process. And I was really fascinated by this, and a couple of our clients also kind of like bought into it. And, thinking about a career where this was the norm, when you want to talk to the people that are using your products and figure out what everybody's doing and what everybody wants to do and how they want to work with the software or the product, was really kind of intriguing to me. So in terms of my soft skills, collaboration, presentation, working with people, having empathy, all that, I felt like it was almost a very natural transition. And just having, some graphic design skills didn't hurt, moving over from Adobe to Figma or whatever. And it seemed kind of like a fairly natural transition, even though from an industry standpoint, it was very different. And so, I owe a lot to this creative director for kind of, sticking his neck out there and saying, here, we're going to change things up, how we do things at the agency. We're not doing it the old way. We're going to do it the new way. I think that helped a lot. But, understanding that in my heart of hearts, I liked the idea of working with people and not just being the person who's like, here it is, take it or leave it. I'm the creative genius,
Great answer. Anyone else?
I had an exercise coming out of the chief people officer job. I've been doing HR for probably longer than I want to admit. I had become kind of a Swiss Army knife. Like I could do a lot of things very well and good. And it really took a friend of mine, a mentor, an unofficial mentor, to really take a step back. And she had me do an exercise. She said, okay, make a list of all the things that you think you do well. And I had this long kitchen sink of things. Okay, what are those things do you actually love doing? What actually gives you joy out of that list? Also, what do you hate doing? And at the end of the day, what are those things that you like procrastinate and are actually like you kind of force yourself to be good at, but are not naturally good, that you're drained like doing? That by the time you get through all this, you have this like core set of things that you actually get energy from and that you love. Then she had me kind of set off to the side. What are the things that you don't know that you're good at, that you haven't tried yet, that you haven't done, that kind of seem interesting, but you haven't had the opportunity to do yet? And it kind of creates this like kind of diagram and like what can you get paid to do out of all these things? And that kind of started to help me really identify like what are some of my like really like my experience, the skills that I'm really good at. Where do I add the most value to an organization? She then that kind of started to become like the skill sets required for a job. Then she started to say, what's your dream job description? Don't just go apply to every job. What actually resonates with you when you read these job descriptions, when you think about all the places that you've been, when you think about the crappy workplaces, what did you not like? What did you love like doing? I kind of built out an ideal like job description and the type of people that I wanted to work with, the type of organizations that I was seeking out. And that really helped me really hone in not only on what can I offer someone, but where do I actually want to be able to, who do I want to actually work with? I can get picky. I don't have to just go, I don't need to be desperate. But at the end of the day, it also means I need to trust in my skill set. I need to trust in me. I can't get that from other people. I have to do that. I have to speak to the value I bring and where I want to bring it.
That was amazing. I love that kind of tool that we can all take home to help kind of figure out the interests and come up with that big Venn diagram.
Yeah.
Besides, personal exercises like that, what kind of resources were useful to you all during transitions or ones that you recommend to others, whether that's like, courses or seeking out a certain type of mentor or reading books? Like what has helped you?
I'll speak to kind of my transition from UX to product management. I actually took a people approach to it rather than getting into like courses. There's so many out there. I know there's a bunch of you here that want to transition to product management. And I get asked about it all the time, like what should I read or what classes should I take? And I knew I'm not really like a classes kind of girl. So I was like, that's not going to work for me. I'm going to get bored and I'm not going to get much from it. So I just networked a lot, talked to people that were at companies that I liked, and basically got myself connected to people that are doing things that I want to be doing. And I was able to get connected to this guy who was really, really senior product manager at Microsoft. He actually ended up leaving to start his own thing, but he was so talented. And I was lucky to get some time with him just through asking a friend of a friend of a friend if they could make an introduction. And yeah, that really changed my whole outlook on how to get into this career. I mean, for me, I was always kind of working in blended roles. So I was working in UX, but at startups, you kind of have to wear multiple hats. And I was doing a lot of, and then when, at a startup, things change every day. And, when a product manager ends up leaving, you kind of have to like absorb that role. And so I kind of already had a little bit of that background, and talking to somebody that's so high up that his time was really valuable, I came into that conversation saying, like, this is what I have experience with, this is what I want to do. What's your advice for me as I'm looking for jobs and transitioning to this new career? And he, you know, a lot of transitioning is like interviewing and prepping for those interviews. That's a huge thing. I don't think you can avoid doing that. But yeah, he actually talked to me about his own journey and kind of how he got into it. And I asked him a question about what does he think successful product managers look like? When you work with other junior product managers, what are their characteristics? And I wanted to know that so that I could present myself better in interviews, and eventually when I get this job, how do I be good at this role? And yeah, besides that, he recommended some books to read. Did I read all of them? No, but I did buy some of them. And yeah, some of them were really great. It's just, some of them were more like interview prep or just case studies, things like that. And those were really helpful for me as I was preparing for my interviews.
Okay, well, sorry.
I was going to jump in real quick and just say
Sure.
really two things have been beneficial for me over my 12-year or so career has been networking and events like these, just getting involved in things because you never really know who you end up meeting. It'll surprise you. And you just make friends with people randomly, and they come back into your life years later with a role, and they're like, we love you for this position. Like, that came out of fucking nowhere. And also when I started my brand a year ago, my e-com brand, I had no idea what I was doing. Like, it was starting from scratch. I've done a lot in my life, but this was completely new, and it was scary, and it was, again, like jumping in 2 feet, uncharted waters. And my buddy at around the same time, ironically, got me a book called Creative Confidence by the Kelly brothers. IDEO, one of the founders of IDEO, and the author of The Art of Innovation. So Creative Confidence. And it's really inspired me along this way. And I'm the worst book reader of all time. Like, I read them like articles. I read a few chapters and I pause for a while, and read a few chapters and I pause for a while. But that's just how I read books. And I think every chapter in that book has really spoken to me as if they understand exactly where I'm coming from, being a creative entrepreneur, a designer, trying to be an innovator, and just trying to do something that's different to me. That's, I'm scared a lot of the time of what I'm doing because I don't know what I'm doing. But one of the things I learned recently was, like, that really resonated with me was act more, plan less, which is basically how I lived my entire life, just doing stuff and throwing shit on the wall and seeing what sticks. Because you never know, because you can get into planning hell and you get stuck. Never really know where you end up until you actually do something. So it really resonated with me, but Creative Confidence by the Kelly brothers, highly recommend.
Thank you. Well, you guys set me up perfectly for this next question, which is about networking. And you already mentioned that it has been beneficial for you. Thinking about those among us that are not super into networking, or you're just feeling out like what that career transition can be, any recommendations for how to enter spaces like this where you see someone that has a role you're interested in? Like, what are some good ways to start those conversations if you're kind of in a speculative space, or conversely, you want that job and you know it and you want to go talk to them and geek out?
So I think there's no really right way to go about making this transition, and I think you have to go about it, like you said, every way possible. Just keep doing things, and you cast a wide net. You go spearfishing for the thing you want. I think, what you were talking about, confidence, I think that goes a lot with keeping that motivation to keep, looking or keep striving towards this transition. And I think part of that confidence comes from what you were saying, talking to people and understanding what this role is that you're trying to work into, what it's about. And so, yeah, I was kind of like the same way you were talking to people and just trying to find anybody who was willing to talk. And you mentioned, faking it, like, the saying, fake it till you make it. But there's also some, and that's a good thing, knowing when to do that is a good thing, but also having this genuine naivete, I think, is really helpful. It's kind of endearing towards people who have the knowledge that you're kind of trying to get. And it breaks down the wall if you really approach somebody with a real genuine curiosity and desire to learn what they do. And so coming to these events and talking to panelists or talking to other people in the room, the more you do that, the more people you'll connect with, and you'll have a natural kind of icebreaker, I guess you could say. Hey, I got your name off of LinkedIn. You were at that thing that I was at. Really curious about that what you're doing. Would you have 20 minutes, 30 minutes to talk with me, via Zoom or whatever, Teams or whatever, or just a phone call? I think that goes a long way with, keeping that confidence and giving you that information that you need about the role that you're seeking out. And it's more than just networking. It's not just getting a name. It's not saying, hey, I was in the same thing. It was like, it's really kind of connecting with somebody and learning from them and giving them a good, the satisfaction of helping you out, but then also you get that knowledge that you're looking for.
Just wanted to add something. Yes, I think connecting with someone is really important, because you could easily message someone and say, like, hey, can I get your time to talk about this job? And if you've tried it, that usually doesn't work. Especially, it's like cold calling, no one really loves that. But like David said, if you can make a connection, like, hey, I saw you somewhere. Also, just maybe being more pointed in your question. So instead of, hey, like, I really want to transition into the role that you're in, maybe be more specific, like what you could use their help with. If you've read if you've seen any of their work or read something that they wrote online, doing some research sometimes helps. But coming into these conversations with a little bit of knowledge about the person and something specific to start off with usually is more helpful than, can we talk about me transitioning to product or UX?
So besides networking, which is like kind of just a necessary evil, I think, for some of us, and some of us love it, but personal branding is another aspect of that. So how did you all, take ownership of your personal brand within your career transition? And what do you have some suggestions for folks for how to do that too?
Okay, y'all are looking at me. So this was a really interesting one for me, having the marketing background. It was really a blessing and a curse, because I know so much about it. But I had a lot of fun with it. Really, like, whether you're working for yourself, there's so many different things that go into it. But even if you're looking to work for an organization, yes, you are a designer or a VP or a director or whatever it is. But what do you want to show your, potential future employer, like, as if you're courting them, essentially? Like, think of it as like going into a dating relationship. How are you different? What are your goals? What excites you about not only this particular job, but the team, what the vision is for the company, the organization? How are you going to add value? What are your unique, skill sets, or what ideas? Like, come to these interviews with ideas and bring those to the table. I had a client not too long ago, and he told me, someone else got the job he was interviewing for, and he received feedback about it, and he took it as, well, this guy listens to podcasts and I don't listen to podcasts, so I'll just listen to more podcasts. Like, you're totally missing the mark. Like, he totally, what the recruiter was saying was, this person just showed more interest in the role. It's not about, I listen to podcasts. It's just, hey, I listen to this podcast and I'd love to share this idea. I think this would be really fantastic at your organization or whatever it is. that you're doing. So how can you stand out, whether you're at networking events? How can you have memorable conversations? How are you showing up authentically, making real connections with people? I think Kasey had mentioned it earlier. You never know who you're going to meet. Maybe you like go into these events very open-minded of, yeah, maybe I didn't find a job, but I made a new networking buddy. And so we're going to tag team some of these networking events. And you might meet someone who's in, whatever field you think I'm never going to be in that field. 5 years down the road, you're like, oh my gosh, you're looking through your network. You're like, I'm so glad I connected with that person. And one other thing too, I'll say, like personally, I love this when people reach out to me and they think that I've forgotten about them, whether we've worked together at a company years ago or I met them at a networking event. To me, just the level of bravery that it takes for people to just send you like whatever it is, like hey, I met you, maybe you don't remember me, regardless of whether they remember you or not. To me, it means a lot. Like, wow, you're really, like, you're trying to reach out and do this. So let's try to connect and see how I can help you, et cetera. So don't be afraid to take those steps. Yeah, you may, never hear back, but if you get ghosted, it's just like you never even reached out, right? It's like no harm, no foul. You won't know until you try. And be, respectful and authentic in how you're able to connect with them.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely perfect. And I'm just going to add on, parachute in, as I like to say, and just also acknowledging the fact that you're not going to make everyone happy. You're also not going to connect with every single person you put the effort into meeting and speaking to and reaching out to. And some folks are going to ignore you. Some people are going to tell you to F off. Some people are going to like really be, interested in speaking to you as well, and being okay with that. I think that's just part of the journey. It's part of, failing is a part of that adventure and that journey, and just accepting it. That's just how the world works. But not being afraid to reach out and saying hello and joining a random conversation that you were not a part of before, but you want to be a part of now. You just jump in. Be courageous.
Great answers. For those of you who have mentored people in their own career transitions, what have you seen really generate some traction for them, beyond what we've talked about here? If you have a case study, I'd love to hear it.
Initiative. So I've coached through General Assembly and through ADP List over the years, pre and post COVID. And I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of career transitioners coming from any sort of job into UX, into design, into tech. I had a lawyer who was leaving law, studying UX, and middle-aged, and he's like, I'm done with it. I love designing, and I want to move around buttons, and this is what I'm gonna do. And I'm like, how can I help you? It's been initiative, taking the initiative to take one step further, right? Okay, so your General Assembly, your boot camp has these 5 things you have to do before graduating. Are there 6 things you can do? Are there 7 things you can do? Are there more? Is there more you can do? Or networking, getting out there, going to events, talking to people. Some people can't do that. That's great. But also, like, okay, you put together your resume. Did you do another resume? Did you do the V1, V2, V3? Are you duplicating your artboards and redesigning your resume, getting feedback from people? Are you going above and beyond? Are you being courageous? Are you having the courage to say, I did everything they asked me. What else can I do? Initiative. That's the biggest thing I honestly think of the success stories I've experienced is taking the initiative, and that's across the board.
Mindy?
I love that. That's so true. And often, I also have mentored people for a very long time. Absolutely love it. I love coaching. But I think often when people come to me, it's like they're trying to find initiative. They had it to begin with, and now they're reaching out to me because they realize I need someone to come alongside of me. I need help. And often what's gotten in the way of the initiative is without them realizing it, they've lost the trust in themselves. You probably hear that as a theme and what everyone has been saying. They've disconnected from themselves. They're looking for everything, all the answers outside of themselves. What they need to be reminded is they, since they were a little child, have been learning skills and how to be successful in this world. Like, you have everything unique already in you. And it's about reconnecting and realizing what that is and believing in yourself. But sometimes you need someone else to be able to help you reconnect with yourself, to find that trust, to be able to get that initiative back again in order to be able to say, yes, I can do that. What is that one thing I can do? It's that shift in mindset too, to be able to go from this is happening to me to what can I do? What can I control? What decisions, what choices can I now make?
I don't know if I want to add anything to that, but I was going to say in my mentoring experience, the folks that came out of that and were really successful in transitioning, like Kasey said, had the initiative, always did more than what was expected, but also kind of knew what they were looking for. And I had one mentee that was very new to UX, and she wanted help in that transition into her first role. And so a lot of times we would meet and she would talk about, like something that happened, and most of it was like not understanding, how to work with managers or team members in a new role. And so she would come with very specific scenarios, and that helped a lot in mentoring her in that way, because we've all had those situations in our workplaces where we don't know how to navigate different teams and people. And so I thought, in our mentoring experience, she came with very specific scenarios that was really good. And then I'm thinking about another mentee that I had, and he really showed initiative. So it was kind of in human factors, looking to like go into UX. And every meeting that we had, he would come with notes. He would come prepared to talk about whatever it is he wanted to talk about, and just kind of like maximize the time that we had. So both of them, like, this was years ago, they're doing great things. They're still in their career journeys, but doing amazing. And they've moved on to other companies and other roles. But I think, taking that initiative is huge.
Great answers. We're nearing the end of our time. Do we have a few extra minutes? Okay, awesome. So, yeah, you call the shots. This could be either for those who have mentored folks, you can call from those experiences, or just your own. But what have been some just barriers that you've seen, or some really kind of common obstacles, whether it's like the financial burden, if it's you trying to make that transition, or like emotional, it's really stressful, you're putting yourself out there, or psychologically trying to figure out if that's like a role that you feel like you're up to, which, as we now know, you have everything unique in you that you need. But just thinking about the folks in this room that are considering that, like, how can we prepare them for some of those things that might crop up in that transitional period, which, as we know, can kind of last a long time sometimes?
Yeah, I think going back to taking the initiative is knowing once you start having that feeling of this role isn't right for me, or maybe you've exited an organization that wasn't on your terms, starting to take that initiative of being curious, what else is out there for me, and exploring that, because you won't get any of that clarity until, in the very least, you start attending events like this. You start having conversations with people. So looking, like, always kind of be on the lookout. Even if you're at a job and you love it, when you get DMs from recruiters, like, say not interested in this, but put them on the sidelines for later, because you don't know in 6 months, in 6 days, where you may have the opportunity to leverage their experience. So I think it's really important to always be taking like the initiative like that, and really protecting your energy as you're moving through this space, right? If you've been, laid off, or you have some exit from an organization, you really need to try to unpack that to the best of your ability and look at it as like you were married to this organization and you got served with divorce papers. Nobody in real life says, after you've been divorced, okay, I have 6 other suitors for you. Let's get you married tomorrow. That's like, they usually say, go live your life, like eat, pray, love, or whatever it is, like live it up. Whereas in the workforce, we say, like a lot of times there's that kind of toxic energy of you need a job, and it's that scarcity mindset. So if you are in this space, or you know, like it's possible, you feel it coming, whether it's you're going to exit or someone's going to kick you out, start preparing for that. So thinking, like going through your finances of what do I really need right now? How can I start preparing? Because you never know what's going to happen, right? Even if it's your own company. So start doing the things like financially that you can try to prepare for that, because transitions they can take a really, really long time, especially in this economy. So from that standpoint, and then protecting your energy from the emotional. Everyone around you, you would hope, is like they're giving you advice and feedback. Sometimes it's unwanted. So make sure that you have strong boundaries and you tell people, I know you're looking out for me, but I'd rather, like, if I want the help, I'll ask you for it. So really kind of going into this like you're going into a fight with blinders on of, this is my team, as if you're training for the Olympics. Like you don't want to have that negative, whatever it is, negative talk, people asking you questions that you don't feel comfortable answering. So really make sure that you're surrounding yourself with whatever that looks like, the positive energy, people who not just say like, oh, it's fine, you're smart, you'll figure it out, but people who can actually co-create with you, whether that's a friend, whether that's a mentor, like whatever that looks like for you. So you're constantly have that momentum, because none of it is linear. It is all over the place. And you want to kind of be able to keep that momentum going. It's really important who you surround yourself with, even if it's just one person that you can confide in, or even if it's just taking in content from podcasts or people that you follow, like anything like that keeps you going is super important. And in the same vein, taking care of yourself. So whether it's going on walks and listening to podcasts, or making sure that mind, body, and soul, you're taking care of all those things and nothing is falling off throughout this process.
Yeah, and keeping that momentum up keeps that initiative going, which when you lose the momentum, you lose the initiative, and then you get stuck in that place where you're feeling negative and you're feeling doubt and you're feeling that lack of confidence. And what you really need is that confidence that you're not going to fail. And so, yeah, surrounding yourself with people who are, of the like mindset of just like, I'm not going to fail. And, even in the boot camp, you're working with 40 other people in a cohort, and they're all trying to go for jobs. But, I think there was a select few of us that identified each other as, these people are firmly motivated. They have initiative. I want to be on their team for the next project. Surround yourselves with those people that keep that momentum going, keep you wanting to have that initiative, so you don't lose confidence and you don't get that self-doubt, and you start to wonder, like, was this the right move? I don't know. I should just go back to whatever it was I was doing, or just kind of stand pat.
Yeah, it's kind of like that career advisory board just for yourself. And also being think about who is in my community, who am I able to seek guidance from? And depending on what that career transition is there a gap? Is there a experience that you don't have to lean on someone where they can open up doors, have connections? Also unique levels of experience, like when was the last time they made that move? How long have they been in that job? Because things have changed so much in the past few years that someone who did that career change 10 years ago versus someone who just did it several months ago may have some really different call outs that you can like learn from their story and maybe bypass a few areas where they had to like unfortunately learn the hard way. And that's what's so great is like stories are super powerful. The more that you get to talk and listen to people's stories, you're able to glean from them those wisdoms of truth that then you can apply. And then this whole process is hard emotionally. I love that. So important, because it's about putting yourself out there. You are going to fail, and it feels like rejection. It feels like everyone's going to be swiping the wrong way on you. It feels like a bad dating experience. And you're like, oh, why is no one swiping right on me? And that's really hard. And so it's kind of how do we capture all the great nuggets of wisdom up here, because you are your own unique person, and what is working for others won't also work for you, but you have to try that out.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say dating. Glass over for me for now. So real quick, just gonna say that experimenting. I think an add on to everything that we just said. I think we hit the nail on the head, but also trying new things, right? Being courageous, taking the initiative, decoupling, decompressing. If you've gone through a layoff, I was sitting in my vacation rental home. I was in the middle of setting up, put on Airbnb 2 years ago, and I was fired or laid off. But same thing. Honestly, at the end of the day, it's all the same. 15-minute call with my CEO. I was like that, done, over. A year of my life ended. So take a little while to decompress, to really just get your mind right. And I did. I took 2 weeks off to finish my home, got it on Airbnb, and I leaned back into contracting, leaned back into freelance. I took another step into the unknown. I didn't go immediately back into full-time roles. I was like, what's happening in my life right now? Who would I know? Reaching out to my network. Reached out to a buddy of mine I met in Puerto Rico at a UXPA conference by the pool over pina coladas in pineapples. And he hooked me up with a venture capitalist firm and a VC firm, and I worked for them for a while. And I set up my business through that. So you never know literally what's going to be coming your way. We work for these businesses, we work for these companies, and they're going to let us go like that. It's going to be over. They're not going to think twice about it. And I feel like we should also not think twice about leaving as well. So set yourself up for success, continuously work on yourselves, work on your brand, work on your networking, work on your resume, work on your portfolio, whatever those things are. Take initiative to do the things that will work. Build a foundation so we can lean on something when it does go. So that's it.
One of the takeaways I have from what you've been saying, Kasey, is that if you do get laid off or you have hard times, go have a drink and then slip someone your Yahoo email or get plugged into a VC.
You never know who you meet at a bar.
It's true.
That's don't drink your sorrows, but decompress in your own way, no matter what that is. If it's healthy, but you never know who you meet out in public. And
it's also proof that when you kind of have your guard down too, because I think sometimes we get very serious about our networking and how we present ourselves. And sometimes those organic meetups where you're just chatting with someone, like the person at the airport, you just end up talking to them and you're like, oh my God, you're a big deal. So I'm going to do one more question, then you want to swap it over to Q&A? Okay, cool. So now that you all have, successfully made your career transitions and you've helped a lot of other people do that too, is there anything that you wish you could have told yourself about your journey? Like if you could give that past self a pep talk, because it sounds like there's a lot of pitfalls and ups and downs and all of that, but what would you tell your past self and these people as well?
it's going to be okay. That's it.
I think I would probably tell myself that it's okay to have a lot of different interests. I think Mindy mentioned a while back kind of being like a jack of all trades. And sometimes I think of myself as being a jack of all trades, master of some. But I think, yeah, I would tell myself to probably just keep going with that. Like just think about what I'm interested in doing. At the very beginning of my career, I was like aspiring to be in these like big roles and, like how can I get to like, C-suite and like what's the path I can take and things like that. And then as I was like in it and realizing what I like to do, I think just focusing on, like what team do I want to work with? What, like what field do I want to work in? Like what are my interests driving me towards?
I almost want to make this one mandatory, but you don't have to.
This question is really hard for me. I'm not entirely sure why. I think I struggle with hypotheticals, but I guess I would tell myself, like, what do you have to lose? If you're not fulfilled right now, if you are, dragging yourself out of bed to go to this job that you're not loving and you have ideas that you want to make a transition, what do you have to lose?
I think that was a great answer that probably a lot of people needed to hear.
I think 100%, like everyone was saying. I think another thing too is really just trusting your intuition. Like, other people can look at you and give you advice, but you are only the best, you're the expert on yourself, right? So really trusting, if you have this inkling, if you have this feeling, explore it to make sure that it's sound and you're not operating out of X, Y, and Z. But if you have this feeling, it's not going to go away. If anything, it's going to get louder. And even envisioning yourself like, okay, if I don't take action on this, what's going to happen in 5 years if I'm in this same position? Am I going to be happy with that? What if something tragic happened, and I'm on a hospital bed or something? Am I going to be happy with how far I've come? And thinking of different things like that to really, like, is this worth staying in this job where I already know I'm unhappy? Like, why drag it out? Would you just leave sooner if you have the ability to do that? So really trusting your intuition, sharing something with people, and even knowing that some of the people that you feel may, you'd want to share with, they might not be the best people. Maybe, the people where you want to transition to is nobody in your group of friends has ever done anything like that. Maybe you want to be a business owner and you've never seen what that looks like. So start surrounding yourself with the people that are doing the things that you want to do, like regardless if it's health, your work, whether it's health and fitness or anything outside of that. So you're exposed to that thing and you can see, how do these people show up every morning? How do they do this? There's no risk in exploring and trying. You can go to an event, you don't like it, you know it exists and you can table it for later. So I think really trusting your intuition, and also knowing, like, yeah, there's a million people that are technically, like, maybe doing your job. There's other project managers, there's other in whatever role it is, but only you have the ability to do it in your way, right? So if I was applying for jobs or trying to do any of the things that any of these amazing panelists are doing, I could try as I might to be one of them, but at the end of the day, I can't. So knowing, like, you have a unique skill set, you have something special to bring to the table and to this world, and really trying to figure out what that is and how you can communicate that, whether it's personal brand or share it with people and have other people play it back to you and what they see in you and as well, because I think that's really helpful. Sometimes we have blinders on and we can't see what it is in ourselves, and other people have a very different perspective. So adding that to your list as well.
I'll keep it short. 3 words that I wish I could tell my younger self. You are worthy.
Oh my God, mic drop. Well, thank you guys so much. We're going to open it up for Q&A, but first, let's give our panelists a round of applause. All right. And we'll have a mic runner if you want to just raise your hand. We've got someone over here.
Hey, thanks. Thanks for the chat. I know David doesn't like hypotheticals, so I'm going to say tonight worked, right? We're all in the audience going to get the new thing, do our next transition, but I want more data. So consider, if you will, what are the 2 or 3 triggers that we'll find to know that transition didn't work? Maybe we keep looking. Oh, take your time.
You stumped them.
The transition didn't. See, I wouldn't say that it didn't work. I'd say that you're just gathering feedback. So maybe you do something and you try it and you realize, oh, this isn't for me, but by way of doing that, like, just, again, reframing. Because if you think of, like, this didn't work, it's kind of negative, right? It's just like you're upset about it, kind of going into that victim mode. And trust me, I've lived in victim mode a lot myself, so I know this very intimately. But thinking of, like, well, what did you get about that? And maybe you didn't like any of it, so that's data right there. Like, okay, I can check all these things off my list. I thought I wanted to go into this role, this type of company, confirmed, hard pass. That's a good data set, I would say. But also being open-minded to it too sometimes, because I've had a lot of people that I've chatted with and worked with that will say, for instance, I, under no circumstance, I'll take myself as an example. I was in advertising, working with tons of different clients. I went client side because I said I will never work with clients again. And here I am working with clients, but it's on my own terms. So it's a little bit different. So trying not to be, and again, from personal experience, not very black and white in your thinking of knowing like, okay, I don't think that I'd want to do something in sales. However, this one brand of apparel or this toothbrush that I'm obsessed with or whatever it is, you would sell phenomenally. So you could be open to that. So having people, whether it's yourself or even working this through with other people, play that back to you of, what did I learn from this? Because if we think of it like failure and everything, like my friend told me to say this tonight, so I'm sorry if you've heard it before, but like if you're like, again, with the reframing, like everything, there's no failure, there's feedback. These are a bunch of cheesy little lines, but they're helpful. Or especially when you're going through the job search process, a huge one for me, when I had my spreadsheets of all the places I applied, anytime, I would never say I got a rejection. I would say rejection is protection or rejection is redirection. So this job didn't work out for me because I'm being protected, and then whether you see what happens with that opportunity or not, it doesn't really matter, but maybe you were going to get that job and then 3 days later they had massive layoffs and you would have been impacted, So however you can reframe those things so you, again, like have that momentum, but everything is data. So whether you realize hell yes or hell no, great. Now you don't have to go down that path anymore. If anything, the hell no's make it a little bit easier, but leave like a little sliver of that door open.
Also, I just want to add, what other option do you have than to just do it and to learn? Because living without trying those things and getting some of that data, like, would you feel satisfied if you just didn't do it? And you're never going to end up in the same, mindset at the end. If you had 3 things that didn't land, you're still further than you were before.
I saw something last night, and it goes along with your cheesy sayings, but I think, and I might be getting this wrong, but I think it said something along the lines of, good judgment comes from experience, and experience comes from bad judgment. So, getting feedback and trying and not taking it as I failed, it's just another step of the journey.
Okay, I have another hypothetical, this or that. It's kind of the situation I'm in right now. I've known for a while that I don't want to be at my job, and I'm on leave, which is great. So I have time to figure it out. But I've heard from mentors and friends to let them fire you so that you get unemployment benefits, but I feel really icky about that because how am I supposed to not let that out in a job interview? I want to be honest, so it freaks me out to not be honest in the future. I don't know, how do you work up the courage, I guess, to either quit and be okay with not having the money or let them fire you? I don't know, I feel like there's 2 paths, really.
Hey. I'll answer that because I've kind of been through both of those scenarios where I've left a job and then I've also gotten laid off. And leaving a job, I think, is a difficult decision. But to your point, you want to do it right and feel good about it. And I think, I think outside of your job, you really have to protect yourself and make a decision that's right based off of where you're at in your life, what phase you're in. Can you risk it to leave your job if it's really not bringing you joy and you're dreading it? That's something that I did. I used to work in consulting and I really hated it and I did not have a job lined up, but I was let me just leave and see what happens. And that was the best decision I ever made in my career, is just leaving to see what else I could explore and pursue without having my 9 to 5 weighing me down. And that's kind of how I started doing freelance work, got connected with a lot of startups, things that I could not have done if I stayed at this really toxic environment that was draining everything in me. So I would, sometimes you just got to do it if it's feeling like that's the right decision. But sometimes, financially, it's not the best decision to leave at that time. And so, you know, networking, doing things like this, lining something up, whether it's your dream job or not, but trying to get to the next step, I think is always progress. So yeah, it really depends, I think, where you're at.
Yeah, just going to chime in real quick and say that, you know, each of these roles, positions, jobs that we held, even if it's like Raising Cane's, Blockbuster, up to like, you know, leading your own design studio, right? They're all stepping stones to the next thing. Whether you choose to leave or you're let go or whatever, however that changed, or you stay there for forever, right? But it's really about, you know, really lean on what Varsha just said, is preparing yourself. If you have the opportunity to prepare yourself and line something up, whether or not that's necessarily the next position, or if it's like a really kick-ass portfolio, you spend a lot of time focusing on taking the initiative, right? Going above and beyond to prepare yourself, build that foundation for the next thing. And then just, you know, if you're unhappy, I mean, I left the job after 3 months after moving to DC. I was so unhappy there. It was not a role that was, it wasn't the position promised to me. And I took the position, it got me to DC. After 3 months, I left for another role. Again, they're just stepping stones, right? At the end of the day, they don't define us.
Okay, so my question, hi. I wrote it down. Can you successfully balance a corporate job with building a personal brand on social media for a design side hustle? / how do you manage the tension between conforming to corporate expectations and expressing your authentic creative self online for the sake of your brand identity? I guess the overall question is it possible to find balance in the midst of this transition to like wanting to be an entrepreneur, but staying at that corporate job for security?
Hell yes. Absolutely. Do the corporate job as long as you need to until you are ready, until you have so much work going on with your side gig that is going to take over your corporate 9 to 5. And let's say you don't make enough, like as much money as you did, or you weren't, that's not a level of comfort you might have if you transition completely into the entrepreneurship. Take it from me. Been there, done that. But there is this freedom and flexibility, and that is unprecedented when it comes to working for yourself and not someone else. You might not have that paycheck, that guaranteed check every 2 weeks. You might not have the same benefits or if benefits at all. But at the end of the day, you control your own schedule. There are pros and cons, there's trade-offs. And then, you know, I always like to say it's like once you're ready to move into your full-time entrepreneur journey, your new dream, just go for it. Because at the end of the day, it's like, will you be happy in 10, 20 years, the same corporate job? And maybe, you know, later in life, regretting not chasing that dream when you had the chance to.
I want to make sure we answered your question in full. Did you also kind of ask about how to, like the self-expression aspect of it and that tension between being corporate and then trying to be you?
Right. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm wondering how to balance. Like, I follow a lot of amazing creative people online, but I'm like, man, would I have the courage to do that knowing that all of my coworkers are going to see that, you know, on LinkedIn, or like doing an Instagram reel with a trending audio and then showing up to a Teams meeting the next day, like, hey. So I guess, is it kind of black and white, or is it okay to kind of be comfortable in that gray area of just being yourself?
I'm just going to pass the mic real quick. I'm sorry. I'm not going to hog it, but I am going to say ask for forgiveness, not permission.
That's good. Yeah.
Another thing too, I just just it depends. I mean, block your coworkers. Like they don't have to see. You know what I mean? Be careful. Like if it's something. Yeah, I mean, see, like start doing it and do things like a little bit in private, test it out. But once you start doing those things, you will give yourself that level of confidence. And it's really amazing to see where you started and where you end up. It's really just going to take just getting the ball rolling and getting that initiative, but picking the platform, and maybe, I mean, just if there's any way that you can put some parameters around it in the beginning, or only have people that you know and trust. Like if it's a private, whatever, Instagram, just don't accept the people that you don't want to see it. Or see if there's any ways, they're always doing different things with social media, right? Of like how you can kind of protect what you're sharing. And if anything, if there's certain posts that you feel, depending on the content that you want to put out there, there's certain, time and a place where you just run it on one platform and you only do the more work relevant ones on the LinkedIn or whatever, and then try to pitch it in a way where it's like you're adding value to the organization, or just you're adding, there's different ways that you can tweak your content, et cetera. But if you have to protect yourself from, certain people, then by all means, absolutely do that.
That's really good advice. Thank you.
I also would just add, from working in a super corporate environment before, read your HR guidebook.
That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
But I was like, if I have to put my compliance hat on, which I really hate, it's just kind of, because it's depending on the type of work. Is it directly competitive? The blocking thing is, because if you're like a recruiter and then you're wanting to build like a recruiting, and I've seen people try, that's actually direct competition with probably you've signed something, confidentiality, all of that. So it's just kind of making sure that you kind of check what you signed, and the employee handbook that no one ever reads. Going back to those social media policies.
Yeah. Obviously, don't wear your work shirt while you're doing something. And yeah, sometimes they have pretty explicit guidelines, but that way you don't even have to worry about asking for forgiveness. You're doing it all within the barriers they set.
Hi. First of all, thank you guys. You guys have been amazing speakers. I personally learned a lot from you guys. So what I understood is most of you has been a part of a mentor and a mentee relationship. Personally, I struggle to do that. Hence, I'm asking for a suggestion from you. How do you identify your mentors?
How do I identify my mentors? Honestly, my mentors have been really good friends of mine. Yeah, I think there's people that come into your life that are further along in their life and their career than you, and you hit it off as good friends, and you really lean on that person for advice and for feedback when you need it. They'll really keep you. You'll know your mentor when they keep you in line. When you were going too far gone, they're like, "All right, Kasey, get back on track."
So if you haven't found them yet, how do you look for them?
I don't want to keep hogging the mic, guys, but honestly, I met Vince, my good buddy of mine, one of my closest friends and one of my closest mentors, through a mutual friend randomly over drinks my 5th day in DC. So it just happens. You find people. There's also organizations out there like Amazing Design People List, who has a plethora of mentors available worldwide in product management and engineering and design and so on and so forth. There's organizations like that for sure.
I also don't think you need to formalize it to the point where you say, okay, you're my mentor, and I'm your mentee. It can be a lot more organic and kind of a natural kind of thing. And I don't think I've ever actually had a mentor-mentee relationship, but I've had plenty of people that I just didn't stop bugging, and they were kind enough to, humor me and essentially mentor me, and they didn't even know it, or they did, and they just kind of, went along with it. But yeah, coming to more of these things, talking to more people online, just asking questions, like you said, ask specific questions of the people that are in the role that you're kind of trying to get into. I think you'll get the same feedback that you're looking for from a formal mentor, from just the people that you interact with, just throughout your transition. I had a LinkedIn profile before I was in the boot camp and trying to get my portfolio together and my resume, et cetera, but I didn't really do anything with it. And then I had some coaching through the boot camp to really kind of flesh out my LinkedIn profile. And one of the things they advised us to do was, really make a lot of connections on LinkedIn, but don't just hit, connect, send a message, say, hey, I wanted to connect with you because of this, and something that's going to like make them stop in their tracks and kind of respond to you. And a lot of those kind of conversations fizzled out over time, but some of them, became, a lot more fruitful in terms of, oh, we've been talking back and forth for, 5 or 6 conversations. Would you mind getting on a call? And you can kind of start that way. Anything you can do to break the ice and get people to engage with you, I think is a good advice. Yeah.
Just want to add something to that. So I actually recently fell into having a mentor, which I was not planning, but sometimes depending on where you work, they might have programs internally too. And this one wasn't a mentorship program at all. It was more meeting people outside of my product area. And of course, like I love meeting new people and networking. And I work at a fairly large company, so I'm pretty siloed where I'm at, but I wanted to meet other people. And that's kind of how I found my current mentor, is just meeting somebody outside of my area that I work in. And we ended up having a lot of things in common and a lot to talk about, even though we don't work on the same things at all. So it's funny how sometimes those random things can turn into a mentorship. I know when I first started in UX, I was thinking my first manager is going to be my mentor, like, because I didn't really know the ropes, and that never happened. So it's hard sometimes in the professional setting, but I would say I don't know if it's even harder outside of that too, because it's hard to get people's time, and then when you're in a work setting, you can set up a call, and it's part of your work day, so that's kind of nice. You're not asking someone to take time out of their evenings or weekends. So yeah, I would say maybe try to see what programs your office has. If they don't have any, I love suggesting ideas to them too. I heard about this program, can we implement it? Maybe they'll make you do it, but that would be a really great initiative that would help you and probably a lot of other people.
One thing also, David bringing up LinkedIn made me think of this, in this digital age of everyone having a really defined profile and headline, a lot of people lead with they're a mentor. And they're putting it out there, not just to brag that that's something that they do, but that's generally an open invitation. So if you're kind of hesitant while you're doing the LinkedIn networking thing, read their profile, see if they're interested in talking to other people. A lot of them are. They get their energy, and you can help fill their cup, so to speak, while they fill yours. You know what I mean. But look out for that, because they're just out there.
I have a question. So I'm kind of also in the middle of my career. So how do I position myself for entry-level role, or should I position myself in career experience? It's like you have like over 10 years experience on the table. So you should target the entry role, like 3 years experience, 5 years experience, or just like still widen that just to catch whatever fish you catch. And also in terms of compensation and professional growth, right? Like a trajectory. Do you suggest to go to a large company or startup company? So in earlier stage of my career transition, I always thought I could go to startup. So I joined a startup. But my manager was not very comfortable about what the role I could play. And my last company was a big tech company, so somehow they had people who move around in different functional. So that kind of confused, right? So sometimes the hypothesis was not always right. It's always like trial and error. But I want to see get more data from you guys, because you have done that successfully. So either entry-level role or middle-level role, or big company or small company. So what's your take on those two? Thank you.
I'll answer that really quick. I know, David, you probably want to chime in too, but I think casting a wide net helps, especially in markets like we're in right now. And when I lost my job a couple of years ago too, sometimes you don't have the resources to sustain yourself. Let's say if you're being really picky. So again, depending on kind of your situation too, but it helps kind of casting a wide net and then doing those interviews. I think you start to find out where you're falling, So if you're not sure, if I should apply for a junior role or a senior role, depending on, your applications and how they're coming back, if you're getting interviews for senior roles and maybe your background looks like a fit for a senior role. And so I think you kind of have to start there. And then as far as the companies, I think every company is different. I've worked with startups and I've worked at really large organizations, and yeah, they're unexpected sometimes. So during your interview process is when it's really critical to find out, what's the flexibility in my role, or, what am I going to be expected to do, things like that. But yeah, it's tough being like senior and having a lot of experience and then transitioning where you're newer to that role, but you still have a ton of experience. That's probably, a lot of it is transferable. So kind of balancing that to see, what you can bring to this new role, even though you're newer at it, you'd still have a lot of experience. So yeah, I would try just starting wider and narrowing down.
Very well said. And I think it does depend on the organization and also what you're trying to accomplish. Because in my career, I definitely have had to take a step back in order to go forwards. And also, I've been in larger organizations where if I would have interviewed people at the company before I went there, maybe I would have chose somewhere else, because once you're in a certain department, it was hard to move out of that department and go elsewhere. Often people there always said you have to leave to come back. And so I do think it's really good to really learn about the organizations before you take the role. Find other people that are working there. Try to understand if you're a curious person, you like to grow, you like to take on new experiences, does this company have a culture of that, for example?
Great answers. Do we have more time, or?
I think we have room for one more question, maybe.
Okay.
Thank you. I have a very specific question to, I guess to the group in general. So it's specific to me. I keep finding myself being drawn back to freelancing, and depending on where I am in my career and how I wanted to start my own company, just working for other startups. But to get to it, my main question is, I want to transition from my company of an app for making things into just an agency, like a studio, doing what I do for freelancing, but just on a larger scale, to the point where, I take on more contracts. At what point did you realize, if this is relevant to you, that you can take on that additional role, that you're just going to continue? When did you realize you could hit that growth accelerator to taking it to the next step from just freelancing to, oh, now I have this agency, now I have more more work that I can do personally in the 40, 60, 80 hours, and then I need an additional person? How did you make that first step into growth?
I love this question because I feel like I mentioned this before, my entire career has been freelancing, honestly, on and off. I've worked at small startups to multi-billion-dollar tech enterprises. But I've been freelancing and working as a contractor throughout that time as well on the side. I think the question is, can you do that can you contract for one client? All right. Then you can do it again. And then you can do it again. And then you have two contracts running simultaneously before you even know it. Maybe you have a time where there's no work, a couple months where there's no work, there's no clients coming through, and then all of a sudden you've got more work you can handle. I don't know if there's ever really a perfect time to do anything. It's just a matter of variables kind of coming together to say, hey, Kasey, you're no longer working for this company while you're working on your vacation rental. Now, okay, well, now I have to pivot. It's ramped up my contracting to full time. And here we are. It's about finding that next client. But if you can sell it once, you can do it again. And you scale up from there. It just takes time. There's no right way to know. There's no right way to do it either. Really leaning on your network, getting to know people, meeting people, build that portfolio. You have a service, you have a product, you can sell it, and then you can scale it. It just takes time.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for that last question. And thank you all so much for being here. Big ups again to our panelists here.
Thanks everyone again. That was a great, I feel like, session. I learned a lot from it. I feel like my biggest takeaway was like, sounds like we all go through the same things, uncertainty, and it sounds like a lot of us just need to take initiative. So thank you so much. I feel like everyone benefited here. Kasey, anything else before we close out?
Hell no, y'all have been awesome. Thanks so much for having us. Thanks for me. Thanks, big shout out to Noah right here for hosting our first ATX event.
Yeah.
Round of applause for Thea for moderating tonight. Incredible job. I don't know why you were nervous today. And then a big shout out again to Capital Factory and to Shortlist Recruitment for hosting us and sponsoring us tonight. We couldn't do these events without them. And thank you all, and have a wonderful night. And just be out of those doors by 9 p.m. That's all I ask. And drink whatever's left. I don't want to take that shit home. Drink it, all right? Thank you guys so much. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
You guys were so great.
So glad. I feel like I should have talked about the.
The natural transition. Thank you.
Yeah, I feel like she's been moderating. Just hiding from us. A total sleeper.
I mean, it feels a little